Televisions, laptops, cell phones, and even electric disco balls were among the items on the shelves behind Robert Burns on our Zoom call this week. He's in charge of marketing and digital media for Sunnking, a Brockport-based electronics recycling company. He and his team are holding a socially distanced recycling event at the end of the month, and this time around they're expecting record attendance. Here's a look at our conversation. This morning we're joined by Robert Burns. He is the Director of Marketing at Sunnking. Welcome, Robert. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So let's start off with giving a little overview of Sunnking, what your mission is, and what you do there.
Yeah, so Sunnking has been in Rochester now for 20 years, and we are an electronics recycler. Obviously, this is a big milestone year for us, so we've been trying to do more in the community as best we can, letting people try and bring their electronics to us, going out to try and pick up some of those electronics. Obviously, the pandemic has gotten in the way a little bit, but we go through more devices in this warehouse in Brockport that we have in 1 week than most people would even imagine. And we're talking about anything that you can think of. From obviously there's televisions, obviously there's computers and phones, but there's also Wi-Fi routers. There's disco balls you and I were talking about that come through here. Really anything with a plug or a battery that comes through here, we're responsible for breaking it down responsibly and then making sure it goes along that line so it can either have some sort of second use or second life, or we can take those components and make sure that they get some more use going forward as well.
Robert, why is it a better idea for folks to recycle their electronics through you than to try to do it at home?
Well, the biggest thing is if you do it at home, it's going to go in the trash, and that's going to go to the landfill, and those materials inside, those copper wiring, some of those other materials inside, the batteries more so. When those get to the landfills, those can obviously have some sort of negative effect to not only our environment, but also everything that we do. And so we try and keep those devices, those batteries, those materials out of the landfills. A lot of them are hazardous. A lot of them are flammable as well. So most people, myself including, when we go home, we look at our devices, once they stop working, we think they're junk. They're not junk. There's another way that you can extend that lifespan for them. And so doing the right thing and making sure you give them to a certified responsible electronics recycler to make sure that they're broken down right, that's the best way to go. It also saves a lot of tax dollars as well.
So you collect the items, you break them down responsibly. Where do they go after that?
Yeah, after that we can break them down, and what we do is we try and find a way first and foremost to find a second life for that device. Let's say you have an old phone. You're not using it anymore. It might be useless to you, but it's useful somewhere else. So we have repair technicians here that are able to go through and make sure old devices, old phones, old computers, televisions, they can still work. We can kind of resell them, and we are able to do that at a deep discount for a lot of people that are able to look at some of the larger screen televisions. Some of those devices they couldn't afford, but now they can because they have a little bit of secondhand love on them. And so we're able to do that. If we can't find that second life for them, well, then we're able to break it down, strip it down, and then take those inside materials, those raw materials, and try and find a second life for those as well. So send those off to other manufacturers that can do more good with either the copper inside of it, or they can do anything that they can with the other plastic materials as well.
So there are a couple of events coming up. We've got one at the end of this month and one a little bit farther down the road where people can actually get involved and recycle some of their materials. And you're doing them in a really safe way. Robert, can you talk about those events and what they'll look like?
Yeah, we've got one event coming up. Our most recent one here in the Rochester area is going to be in August 29th over in Webster. And what we're doing is making sure that there's a safe place for us at home. We've been locked up at home now for months. We're tired of it, but we've also taken inventory. We've seen this. People have taken inventory of what they have inside their home and realized, I don't need this anymore. I'm not using this anymore. Let me get rid of it. Can I make a few bucks? If not, what's the next best way to do it? Well, we've been holding these recycling collection events for years now, close to a decade, and they've become extremely popular. Well, the pandemic kind of hit, and that's gotten in the way a little bit. So we had to rethink the way that we put these events on in a safer way and in a more productive way as well. And so we have the events. Now you have to pre-register is what we're asking online. That way we know how many people are coming. And that way we can book a time slot for you, the individual, to make sure you have a safe way. There's really no wait anymore to go through those lines. Staying in the car as well. That's going to be the next pain point here that people are going to have to get used to. We've always had people want to help us take their electronics out. Well, we have plenty of staff there, and we're able to take those devices out of your trunks or out of your truck beds. It's a contactless experience. So you're able to come up, we take those devices, you drive off and try to enjoy the best of the weekend, the best that you can after that.
And folks have a couple weeks before that event, so how do you recommend they use their time?
Yeah, well, in that period in between, you go through your house, you go through your apartment, you look around, you see what are we using, what are we not using. Instead of just taking up space, maybe you want to take that space back. This is the perfect time to do that, to just take it and put it in the back of your car and let us figure out the best route for that device going forward. So I know myself, I've gone through not only my house, but my parents' house as well, and gotten rid of a lot of junk that they're just not using anymore, especially my folks, they want to hold on to because they bought it at some point. And that's great, we bought it, but there's no sense in holding on to it if you're not using it or if it's not getting any use. Maybe there's some other way it can get some use going forward. And that's really what we're trying to push here, is trying to think beyond that first purchase life cycle of any device.
Robert Burns, thank you so much once again for taking the time with us this morning. Sunking's next recycling event is coming up on Saturday, August 29th at the Xerox Corporation parking lot in Webster. They're asking that you pre-register before arriving, which you can do on their website, www.sunking.com/events.